And we are live. It is just after 5:01 p.m. on Tuesday, July 22nd, year 2025. This is episode 1326 of Houstonic.live of the full-length episodes. We have a bunch of video shorts as well, several hundred additional videos, which we have shared on other platforms. And thank you for being here. Going to give you a quick intro on what the context is of today's show. Calling this one the upside of the opioid epidemic in the United States of America. Now, that is a infuriating line. I can understand how it should enrage people. If it should enrage anyone, it should be me, and it does. And I never would have ever thought of titling a video something like that, but I've actually found, believe it or not, some documents that are actually called, like one is called Q&A, Opioid Epidemic's Upside, More Donor Organs. Now, the grim statistics of the opioid epidemic in the United States, which is the predominant driver of the fatal number of drug overdoses. Remember, you can go back to a short video I did recently. 1999, 2000, we had about 20,000, 19,000 to 20,000 fatal drug overdoses per year for each of those years. I consider that to be the baseline. Somehow that number has crept up over two for several years, between 2020 and 2023, well over 100,000 a year. And now it's down to the 60,000, maybe even 70,000 range. And, of course, people are celebrating, yay, it's down. Like, no, it's still 3 times what it was as a baseline. It's still at a catastrophic levels. These increased number of deaths, with a country with 3 million deaths a year, if 100,000 plus are from drug overdoses, that means 1 out of every 30 deaths is a young person dying of a drug overdose. Does that seem reasonable to you? That is so out. That is so off the norm, and yet social media is there to make sure that we don't know about this or understand it in context. So many young people have been killed with drug overdoses that it is going to have a long time, basically a permanent demographic impact on the United States of America. It is the main reason why life expectancy went down during the pandemic. A fact which was used to suggest that we had a deadly novel virus from a lab or a cave, something to do with Fauci or EcoHealth or China or something, and therefore we needed to have an emergency response. And even the organizations which take money to lie about why people die, but take money to supposedly to protect people against these medical countermeasures, which everyone would agree were not heavily tested going into the pandemic. Even they, the ones that, because most of them are paid to lie about why people die, they do not talk about the opioid epidemic at all. Or if they do mention it, they won't put it into context and say, that was, the data from that was a big part of sculpting the narrative, of creating the numbers necessary to suggest we had a deadly novel virus in the first place. None of them will do it. So, unfortunately, as Jonathan Cooey, PhD, Gecko and Biological, just showed, finally, a Dr. Robert Malone, who many people don't know, but if you watch my program, you definitely know quite well, one of the biggest voices in controlling what people think, as far as anyone who's ever had any notion of wondering what was going on. Eventually, they are going to be faced with Robert Malone on the screen. Robert Malone, of course, never mentioned the drug epidemic, unless it's to suggest that maybe ketamine's cool. Maybe ketamine has an upside. And you know what? Maybe it does. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with it, to be honest with you. But that said, first off, there's very seldom such a thing as a free lunch. Everything has a trade-off. What is the trade-off? Is the trade-off worth it? Is it understood? And if we're going to be talking about performance enhancing or illicit drugs or whatever, why can't we talk about the drug epidemic? Oh, that's right. He takes money to lie about why people die. He takes money to lie about the nature of the opioid epidemic in the United States of America. So there's the background here. And I did share another video today, which I'll comment on towards the end. So why am I thinking about this topic today? What led me to think about this? Bret Weinstein, over the weekend, I believe, released almost a 3-hour video titled "The Truth About Nazi Doctors: A Conversation with a Dr. Jonathan Hudson and a Dr. Michael S. Bryant." And they are talking about medical experimentation, which is documented to have occurred during World War II, performed in Germany or in German prisoner/concentration camps. And they talk about some of the doctors who oversaw that concern. This video, I think, needs a serious teardown as far as the things that they are wanting to talk about, things that they sort of suggest people should think about or how they shouldn't think about it. I'll bet you, if I look at the transcript, you will not find the word vaccine mentioned once during 3 hours, which is kind of amazing given the fact that vaccine technology is probably the main thing that benefited from exactly what they were doing in those concentration camps. And also they talk about the character of Joseph Mengele. And, what did he really get along with his family? And what did his neighbors think about him? I don't care. Why should anyone care? Why did that testing really happen? How did Mengele escape? Why were institutions actually facilitating his escape and ensuring he remained not caught for decades? Why were the records never visible? Why were they protected until, oddly enough, the second month of the COVID-19 pandemic? The Vatican kept them in the basement all those years. And why does it seem plausible that some of the people related to the polio vaccine might have also played a role with respect to information related to what was gathered in those camps on the output and the discoveries of that medical experimentation, such as a Dr. Hillary Kaprowski? I mean, there's a lot of questions. None of them are addressed here. However, though, they sort of, they don't really take it on head on, but they suggest all the things which are to be learned or could have been learned about the twin experiments and how these are things you wouldn't normally do in regular time. But, objectively speaking, there really is a lot of information to learn. And then at some point, they get into how in Germany there's still buildings which are filled with brains in jars. There are still facilities that have brains and organs in jars sitting on shelves collected from people in World War II, and they don't know how to respectfully dispose of them. I mean, I don't even know. I don't know. I mean, what do you do with something like that? You mean is someone's soul still in their brain? Maybe somehow should it go with their body? I don't know. No one knows the answers to these things. You just don't throw it in the trash, though. Either way, why did they hold on to them? Embarrassment? So there's a whole lot of things that it doesn't mention. It does eventually, though, get into the grim topic of how so many young people in those concentration camps, those prisoner camps, it created a lot of opportunity to have a lot of young people available for dissection, available for autopsies, available for study, available for organs. And then there's a suggestion made that organs are worth a lot of money. And, when people die in the United States, when it comes to organ donor programs, we don't know. Sometimes people lose chain of custody. They don't know. Someone maybe some organs get taken out somewhere. Maybe someone can't afford a burial. So what happens to the body? Very grim topics. But how many times have we seen on the news? At very least, they did make mention of this. I think this guy is pretty much on the up and up. The person who is on the screen there, the younger doctor, who did a lot of this research. I just don't think he's considered all the angles of it yet. Unfortunately, I'm not sure Bret Weinstein is smart enough to know all the angles. But one way or the other, he has been directed in such a way that he is limiting the spectrum of how much they can talk about. But the topic of the dead and organ donors and organ harvesting, let's not use that word, but organ collection and repurposing and so on, and bodies or cadavers available for scientific purposes, how these things are worth thousands. And Bret Weinstein even disgustingly suggested about the incredible medical value of abortions. He didn't quite word it that way. He tried to sound like super respectful. Really? Really? Now, I'm sure there is a lot of money to be made from the cells, from whatever you want to call it. I don't know the most respectful way, from abortions and so on and other medical procedures related to childbirth. And, if wondrous things really did come out of there, I don't know, but have they? Other than just more testing and more curiosity and justification for doing more experiments and more vaccines and more genetic research and then more surveillance, I'm not sure anything has really come out of it yet. I hear all these promises, but that all said, let's put that aside. By watching this thing, and I need to do a whole video just breaking this thing down, and it probably won't because other stuff will come up. It came to my realization that, a lot of young people in the United States have died of a drug overdose. Of course, our adult son, age 27. And I've never, might surprise you, I never gave it a lot of thought about would they be used, the deceased from drug overdoses, for either organ donorship or would they have extra value in some other way. And sure enough, as I started doing the reading, believe it or not, young people that die of drug overdoses are considered valuable because they are generally seen as not having died of a disease. And aside from, in fact, in many cases, their livers are even considered okay because their livers haven't been used in a way such as someone who's been an alcoholic. I was shocked. So they're generally young, and I don't know, for some reason I thought that there would be concerns about the drug usage, but they're actually very valuable. So we had a huge surge in very valuable dead Americans. So not only did that play to the benefit of creating the pandemic narrative and keeping life expectancy down while people were being slaughtered in hospitals, the elderly, but it also provided a whole lot of this whole extra resource chain. And in fact, maybe having the number of fatal drug overdoses go all the way back down, there might actually be fighting against that. Just like, why would they want to stop aborting children? Holy moly. Hundreds of thousands. For the record, I don't believe the government should generally get involved in it. I really don't. You can hate me for that, okay? If we don't have the spiritual grounding and the appreciation of life to want to do everything as often as possible within our control to protect life, well, you know what? Then society already is too far gone. So I don't think having a law that criminalizes abortion, suddenly is going to make us a greater moral society and increase appreciation for life. So, matter of fact, the goal shouldn't be to criminalize abortion. The goal should be to keep whatever procedures are necessary in all circumstances available and reduce the total number of abortions and protect life. That's what should happen. Whatever the case, all right, I've probably already pissed off enough of people saying that right now. But there is such a demand by all these geneticist freaks to get their hands, their grubby little fingers on that stuff. Why should this huge feed of adults, young adults, teenagers in many cases, dying of drug overdoses, why would they want to turn off that spigot? So I'll show you the two quick documents quickly, and then, again, it's a quick show for today. No, I didn't want it to be in that box. I actually wanted it to be full screen here. This one is, do I have a date on this document? I don't have a date on this one here. It shows 2020. Okay, so this is before the epidemic got as bad as it is right now. It was already bad. It was already at record level. And then from there, it got 50, 60, 70% worse. This is the United States government. Understanding the drug overdose epidemic's effect on organ donation. The epidemic explains a significant portion of the rise in decreased organ donation, but accounts for less than half of the increase. The national organ donation and transplant system remains focused on better understanding of the impact of the drug overdose epidemic on organ donation and transplantation. While the reach of the nationwide, decades-long problem is well beyond this community, UNOS, and that stands for, it says it somewhere around here. I forget how that, I think it might stand for United Nations something or other. UNOS is duty-bound to ensure the safe, efficient, and respectful donation and transplantation of donor organs continues and improves regardless of the way a potential donor has or lost his life. In other words, hey, you know what? If a lot of people are dying of overdoses, well, we're not going to ask any questions. Matter of fact, we need more organs, but we're not going to ask any questions. That's for someone else to figure out. We need to stovepipe our problem solving here. It goes on to say, it has been reported that the increase in the number of deceased donors is entirely or largely due to the overdose epidemic. However, a recent analysis suggests that overdose deaths account for less than half of the increase. Well, I know many people who have died of a drug overdose and did not have the organ donor box checked on their card. It's odd. It's almost as if they knew. It's almost as if a lot of them knew. They knew they couldn't avoid it. And they knew that they were probably going to be torn up when they got to the hospital eagerly. Interesting. So I'm sure there are other things which have contributed. It is important to be mindful that, and again, this is a 2020 document. One, the data collected about deceased donors during the evaluation for potential organ donation has always been specifically tailored to the type of information needed to support organ matching and allocation. Therefore, it is not designed to capture nuanced details about the causes of death in ways that would support robust analysis of drug overdose deaths themselves. While I can, narrator's note, I can see that. I guess I would agree with that. At the same time, it almost sounds like a little bit of a cop-out. If your business is getting organs and making organs available, then you have more business if there's more organs to be collected and more organs to be made available. It is what it is. Okay, it's almost a conflict of interest. So they're saying that they're not in the business of it. And I can understand there is a conflict there. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people in this business who are disgusted that this is the case. But there is an unavoidable conflict there. I mean, the more they could just say the conflict for what it is, the more I would be like, okay, well, at least you can see it. Continuing on, 2, misclassification of donor cause of death could be occurring given that complete information about cause and manner of death may not be available at the time of death, particularly for deaths due to injuries such as overdoses that often require additional medico-legal investigation to document. There's many times when someone will die of obviously an overdose, and you want to determine exactly which substances are in there. Was it a single one? Were there multiple ones? Is there evidence of long-term use or something like that? Those things might be involved. Like someone may be, I don't know. I'm not going to get into that just yet. Okay, overdose deaths are a factor in decreased organ donation. That's an interesting way of saying it. According to an epidemiological analysis of transplant registry conducted by UNOS researchers, the overdose epidemic can explain a significant portion of the decades-long rise in decreased organ donation. Decade-long rise, and deceased. I saw stupid. Sorry about that. And deceased organ donations, although overdose deaths still account for less than half of the increase. Well, they have these campaigns to encourage more people to donate organs. So I'm sure that some of it is due to that, but also you have a lot more people dying from drug overdoses. So that has to play a role, even if those portion of people aren't signing the organ donation box. UNOS researchers have found that while overdose deaths have played a role in increased organ donation, they were not the only factor. In fact, in recent years, deaths due to injuries other than overdoses, such as motor vehicle, traffic accidents, and other accidents, homicide, and suicide also contributed to increased donation. It's tricky. That's tricky. Are homicides up in the United States? Maybe in some areas. Suicides, a lot of suicides are done by drug overdoses. So this is where it gets kind of complicated. Either way, it's up dramatically. And I think you can see it. I never considered it. For some reason, I thought that the drug overdose victims would be used less for this. But I don't think so. Matter of fact, they may actually be more valuable because they tend to be younger. The next document is, I've already downloaded, is this one here. This is, where is this from? I don't have the source. This is on uwmedicine.org. That's either University of Washington or University of Wisconsin. Q&A. Opioid epidemics upside. More donor organs. More donor organs have become available due to overdose deaths. University of Washington Medicine's Chief of Transplant Surgery, Dr. Jorge Reyes, talks about the organ's health, risk of infection transmission, and the surrounding stigma. This interview was condensed and edited for clarity. So the question to the transplant surgeon is, what is the relationship between organ donation and people who overdose on drugs? The answer was, organ donation is an operation done on people who have died. They are legally, biologically, organically, ethically dead. When you're dead, you're a cadaver. The question before us is specifically about donors who have died because of a certain reason, drug overdose. We've been using organs from donors such as these for a long time. Definitely, the number has increased dramatically because of the drug abuse epidemic that is worsening, particularly due to prescribed drugs. But the essential component is brain death. That's true. Matter of fact, I think that happened to Brandy Vaughn. I think she died of a fentanyl-laced something or other that was probably put into her bathroom. There are also people dying from different overdoses. Heroin, methamphetamine, really hardcore drugs that suggest a bad lifestyle that expose them to infections, malnutrition, disease. You would wonder why we'd use organs from such a patient. Historically, there has been reluctance, but today we have tests for the potential transmission of infection, hepatitis C, hepatitis B, HIV, and we can manage those conditions. Many patients dying of drug overdoses are negative for any transmissible infection. Those who are positive, we actually can still use those organs because even though there is evidence they've been exposed to these infections, the livers are completely normal. If you have an infection and if you have something in your body that you shouldn't, your liver should be detecting it. It makes you wonder, if someone's HIV positive, but the liver's fine, maybe it's not a big deal. I don't know. Many of these infections are treatable. The bad one used to be hepatitis C, but now hepatitis C can be cured easily. So we're transplanting organs from hepatitis C infected patients, normal organs, so to speak, the liver, the kidneys, the heart, into patients who have a history of hepatitis C. Question, but you're not transplanting those organs into people with no history of hepatitis. Answer, if the patients are sick enough, if they are likely to die within, say, 30 days, we are considering using those organ patients who have never been exposed to hepatitis. There you have the risk-benefit ratio that we deal with in medicine all the time. Question, is there any type of overdose that would preclude donation? Answer, Tylenol overdose would preclude the liver, but we could use the kidneys. Just the fact of the drug overdose doesn't usually create problems with organs. Usually death is a consequence of respiratory failure, like Brandy Vaughn. Rupture of intracranial vessels, things like that. The potential adverse circumstances would be infection in association with this lifestyle of drug abuse. The liver would be the most common for hepatitis C, for example, but there would be no effect on the no effect on the donor, heart, or lungs. I'm not going to read any more. I think I'm upset enough right now at this. I didn't know. So in addition to all of these drug overdose deaths, giving them data necessary to suggest a deadly novel virus, there's also been a huge financial boom for available organs. I did not know this. I didn't know this. As a matter of fact, I've been thinking lately, I think that the number of people that have been on waiting lists for organs, I used to hear about it all the time. You know what? The last couple of years, I don't hear about it anymore. Isn't that kind of terrifying? Now, this video with Bret Weinstein and these other two doctors about Nazi concentration camps and their testing and so on and so forth. Bret keeps talking about how we have to be so careful as a society, that there's such a tiny, tiny little difference between us, because people who can respect life and know what to do and what not to do, and what the Nazi scientists did. Yeah, and it is repulsive. Meanwhile, he is actually a key part of not talking about the drug epidemic. He is actually getting money to lie about why Americans are dying. He gets money to lie about why people die. He gets money to effectively never talk about the drug epidemic. Bret Weinstein gets money to not acknowledge that 1 out of every 30 deaths in the United States of America for 5 years in a row was someone in their teens, 20s, or 30s of a drug overdose, and the impact of that on life expectancy, or possibly even the availability of organs. He actually gets money to deny that. He doesn't even deny it. He never even mentions it. So in a way, we are in Nazi Germany right now. We are there. We are there right now. By what we are not talking about. Not talking about hospital protocols. Not talking about toxic levels of oxygen giving people ARDS. Not talking about the drug epidemic. Denying the role of population pyramids, which were understood to happen a certain way decades ago. Not talking about the vaccine is really a transfection that has been rebranded. There's so many things that they're not talking about. So in effect, we are there. We're already there. I don't think the other two people that are there know exactly how they are being used right now. And crazy enough, they're talking about Josef Mengele. How the hell did he escape Germany? He escaped Germany by the Vatican. The Vatican helped him escape. The Vatican protected him in South America. Why? Because he gave a lot of money in the basket on Sundays? Why did the Vatican go out of their way and spend money to protect Mengele? You know why? Because the Vatican also protected volumes and volumes of research notes and observations that Mengele had from experimentation on prisoners in World War II. Those experimentations were a gold mine for understanding various immune system responses to various horrific experiments. The Vatican is where all of the HIV researchers have been collecting and aggregating, meeting to talk about HIV. The Vatican is the main supporter of people who have HIV worldwide. The Vatican hosts the first AIDS conference. The notes of Josef Mengele were hidden until February of 2020, when finally the Vatican opened them up to people to a wider audience, finally. Because people have been going there to review them for ages. Bret Weinstein is actually now in the game of rewriting the history of what happened to Jewish and Catholic, Jewish and Christian prisoners of war and in World War II. He's actually taking money to lie about that, in addition to lying about the drug epidemic in the United States of America. So we're already there. So I would love to review that. You can find this online still. This was a day ago on the Dark Horse podcast, Truth About Nazi Doctors. The Truth About Nazi Doctors, I think you can learn a lot more by what I've covered so far. And I do not have an exhaustive understanding of all of those doctors. I simply took a new angle and went down a path that no one considered before. And for some reason, there's no way to describe that with any of the available explanations, meaning that they're all wrong or they're all lying. Now, the other thing I wanted to add is I just reposted a video from another channel on YouTube. I forget the name of it. A beautiful, lovely young woman. I think she might have some connection with Vice TV, about spent nuclear fuels, about how nuclear waste is not what we've been thinking it was, how we've been lied to. I'm not saying that I know for sure that the claims that there can be 80 or 90% or 95% of the available energy can definitely be harvested from uranium. I suspect, though, that it is a pretty high number. Okay, I don't know exactly what it is. And we're seeing now, over the last couple of years, slowly, this information coming out. There's a quote in there that there's enough potential energy still remaining in the spent nuclear fuels, just in the United States, to meet the entire current energy demand of the United States for 140 years. That's how much potential energy is there. Now, there's going to be energy used to recycle that, from fuel rod to fuel rod and fuel rod and so on. It's not 100% free, and there does seem to be some additional developments in reactors to use that as effectively as possible. However, though, I think that the possibility that most of the available energy was still there and that was going to be in those rods was known probably several decades ago. There has been a plan afoot using nuclear power, putting things aside after using just a little bit of the energy, and then storing them for someday in the future where there's going to be a massive, massive demand for data centers to understand how human life is engineered. This has been a plan for a long time. And it's the reason why spent nuclear fuel is stored in a box that you can usually access with a truck. Even when it's underground, it's in a cave with paved roads and lights. It doesn't make any sense. It's never put somewhere where you can't get it with a truck or a big forklift. Doesn't make any sense. It's all stored in places which is still available. Known about this for a long time. I don't know what the exact truth is about how much energy they can extract. I don't need to. What I can tell you is, why are they building nuclear waste facilities above ground in containers that are designed to only last 40 years, which is when the energy is going to be needed, on a railroad track not too far away from Abilene, Texas, where they're building this $1 trillion in data centers that Trump just announced. They're storing spent nuclear fuel down the road or down the train track in New Mexico above ground in containers, which are only need to last 30, 40 years at most. Sometimes you just have to look at the evidence and go, there's no other way to describe this collection of facts. So you can find that video on YouTube, but I reposted it on Rumble and BitChute and so on. So now you know where to find it. It may not be the most technically accurate thing, but I think it is. It should be opening us up to what's really been going on there. And I think that plan has been afoot probably since the late 1970s, when suddenly reactors started melting down. And we were encouraged to put all the nuclear fuels aside, at least within the United States. I think that's how far back this idea goes. All right, guys, that's it. Disgusting, dark stuff. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for the support. I lied again. I was going to do mail today. Maybe I'll do later on tonight or tomorrow. Okay, promise. Take care. God bless.